All ships must implement a regular program of testing radio equipment like GMDSS, handheld VHF sets, and emergency radio beacons. Distress calls procedures should be designated in writing, and the operator must have a GMDSS certificate. Handheld sets should have sealed lithium batteries marked for emergency use only and with the expiration date. The GMDSS officer should conduct daily testing and record the ship's position when making the test. Battery rooms and chemical stores are hazardous locations where personal protective equipment should be available. In addition to safety data sheets, chemical storerooms should have rubber gloves, goggles, aprons, and portable eyewash units. Battery room doors should be marked with warnings, and the emergency batteries must regularly be tested and records maintained. Inspectors look to ensure that safe practice is followed when metal drums and large pipe fittings are stowed on deck. Wooden dunnage should be placed beneath them to prevent movement and friction against metal surfaces. Chemical drums should not be allowed to rust into a dangerous condition. They should be marked clearly and an accurate inventory maintained, thereby allowing easy and positive identification. One of the most important aspects of an inspection is the ability to demonstrate adherence to safe working practices. Inspectors will be most interested in those activities that require issuance of a permit to work. Read more about these below. Enclosed space entry permits are to be issued as required by company procedures and guidelines. When stowing items on deck, care must be taken not to block doors, life-saving or firefighting appliances. Interior fire doors must also be able to close completely. A maintenance schedule should be established to monitor the continuing efficiency of spring door closers. Watertight doors are generally tested using light. Have the deck crew test lifebuoy lights as part of the ship's arrival routine, as they will be checked by both port state and vetting inspectors. Heaving lines should not be attached to lifebuoys with lights, and the release must work properly. If an accident or near accident is recorded in the log and no formal report has been filed, a failure to report will normally be cited as a deficiency. The onboard medical log will be checked to ensure that all incidents requiring treatment are recorded. During the examination, the inspector will be looking for evidence of safe work practices. Any open manhole or deck grating must be covered when left unattended, irrespective of reason or time duration. Any ladder in use must be tied off to prevent falls, and all personnel involved must use proper protection equipment. Safety committee meetings should be conducted at regular intervals, with the inclusion of ratings from each department. Minutes of the meetings should be recorded together with hazards identification, corrective actions, responsibility and timeline. There should also be an onboard training plan comprising safety videos, computer-based training and course books. A colour code scheme for deck and engine piping and valves is an established good practice. Cargo and fuel pipes must be hydrostatically tested to 1.5 times the maximum working pressure on an annual basis, and the date should be stenciled on the pipelines. Firefighting foam must be of the proper type for the service of the vessel. On chemical tankers, foam compounds must be effective on both polar solvent and hydrocarbon liquid fires. The inspectors will check that foam compounds are satisfactorily tested annually. A crew member must be assigned to challenge all visitors, and inspectors view the process as a reflection of due diligence. It may be helpful to post an additional signboard close to the gangway, requiring non-crew to report to the duty officer. Safety helmets and safety shoes are a must on deck. Ear defenders are a must when working in engine spaces. The master's standing orders must be signed and acknowledged by the officers on watch. Likewise, the chief engineer's standing orders must be signed and acknowledged by duty engineers. Insulation mats should be placed at the foot of all electrical switchboards and at the base of the electrician's test bench. Starting and operating instructions should be posted for emergency steering gear, the emergency fire pump and the emergency generator. The instructions must be clear and readable. Safety warning signs must be well posted. Lathes, grinders, welding machines, drill presses and other such power equipment should be marked with appropriate warnings. A good wipe down of all oily surfaces should be standard pre-arrival procedure. Any leakage of oil or cargo on deck must be stopped with proper repairs. The inspectors will check the deck areas as well as bilges, pump rooms and save-alls. Adequate drums, enough for 12 barrels of deck spillage, should be available for fighting small spills. As well as non-sparking shovels and brooms, sorbent materials and emulsifier for deck cleanup should be to hand. Garbage management must be properly documented, where all disposals are recorded. Records must state any plastic incinerated on board and when landed ashore for disposal. Plastic ashes must not be thrown into the sea, but must be retained for shore disposal. On tankers, a minimum inventory of gas detection instruments is required by the OCIMF. This includes at least 2 instruments to measure 2 lean atmosphere, such as a combustible gas indicator, 2 instruments measuring the hydrocarbon gas in an inert atmosphere, such as a tank scope, 2 instruments capable of measuring oxygen content, such as an oxygen analyzer, 1 instrument capable of measuring the presence of toxic gas in parts per million. These instruments consist of a hand pump and detector tubes, which are marked with a scale and change colour when toxic atmosphere is sampled. On oil tankers, tubes for benzene, hydrogen sulfide and hydrocarbons should be carried, as well as tubes for any other toxic cargoes routinely carried. A sufficient inventory of tubes should be maintained on board, and their shelf life, as marked on the box, must be monitored at regular intervals to ensure validity. Expired tubes may be used for training purposes, but must be clearly marked for training only. It is strongly recommended that ships carry at least 2 personal gas alarms, capable of continuously monitoring oxygen content and possibly hydrocarbon levels. Inspectors like to see personal gas alarms used when personnel enter a confined space, such as the pump room. The company SMS manuals should clearly detail procedures for use of personal gas detection instruments. Proper maintenance is essential to proper operation. Read more about it here below. On tankers, planned maintenance should ensure that pressure and vacuum valves are tested regularly. The ratings and test dates should be stenciled on the risers. On tankers, all entrances to the accommodation must be closed, except one designated entrance. The route from the gangway to the entrance door should be clearly marked. Ventilation and air conditioning have to be on recirculation during cargo operation. During transfer operations on tankers, all entrances to the accommodation must be closed, except one designated entrance. Regular monitoring of void spaces, including ballast tanks, for volatile gases must be recorded. Oxygen content sensors must be properly calibrated. The instrument should read 0 when 99.9% nitrogen is introduced and read 21% when ambient air is introduced. Inert gas systems should be capable of delivering an output with not more than 5% oxygen content. An approval certificate for cargo and stability computer should be on board. Spring return valves on the sight glass on lube oil and similar tanks must never be tied in the open position. Likewise, self-closing cocks on sounding pipes must not be left in open position. Hydraulic header tanks for steering gear must be maintained in a topped-up condition, as should fuel tanks for the emergency generator and lifeboats. The mooring winches should have the direction of rotation for payout marked on the flange. A winch brake test must have been conducted within the last 12 months, where the winch brake is confirmed to hold up to and slip at 60% of the maximum braking strength of the mooring rope. The mooring lines must be without heavy chafing. Ropes in the same service should be of the same material and diameter. Mooring ropes should not be left turned up on drum ends. Ropes made of polypropylene must not be used due to their low melting point. Take care that ropes are wrapped onto drums in the proper direction. On the tension side of a split drum winch, ensure that only a single layer of turns is made, in order to avoid the line becoming buried in lower layers. Rust is an eyesore for any inspector. The difference between acceptable levels of corrosion and too much rust is highly subjective, but looks do tell. An important indicator to an inspector is evidence of a good deck maintenance plan, with significant areas de-rusted and recoated. If the ship is equipped with chemical suits, they should be properly stored and maintained. Failure to do that reflects badly on the ship and indicates that dangerous operations are handled haphazardly. In a clean, orderly condition, with adequate segregation. The sample locker must be stowed so that sample bottles do not move at sea. Due to the fire hazard, the locker should be fitted with a remotely released extinguishing system, or a fire extinguisher should be located close to the entrance door. The door should be marked "Keep closed, no smoking and flammable liquids." There are many commonly cited deficiencies. Some are particular to vetting inspections and some are more relevant to port state inspections. All deficiencies have a basis in statutory regulations, industry guidelines, or established good practice. A complete list of all possible deficiencies would be impossible to illustrate in this training program, so only the more common problems encountered are included. The contents of this section are not considered exhaustive, but focus on statistically prominent items. With the do's and don'ts of an inspection. These are a few points that you should check before an inspection. Safety is on the daily agenda. The crew is well trained in safety matters. The crew think safety first. Environmental protection policies are followed. The Protection and Environment Committee is motivated. All participate in accident and near-accident analysis and corrective and preventive actions. Safety awareness programs are ongoing. All on board are familiar with vessels and fleet lost time injury rate and LTI objectives. An updated questionnaire must be on board well in advance of the inspection. Each question must be checked one by one to ensure that it is understood as intended, and if complied with or not. Decide and follow up actions for the items to be corrected. Decide on the items not to be covered in line with the company standard. Onboard planning meeting to ensure inspection preparation at all levels on board. Relevant parts of the inspection questionnaire are distributed. Preparations are made within each department on board. Answers on the given questions are agreed. Documentation needed for questions is prepared. References to required documentation are noted in the inspection questionnaire. The inspector's first eye contact is with the gangway. He will notice if it is properly secured and if there is a safety net. The chief officer should give personal attention to its final position and ensure that a rope handrail is rigged alongside the portable steps. A lifebuoy must be placed near the gangway. The inspector's second sighting should be boldly marked safety signs and warnings. On tankers, the compulsory warning signs must be fitted near the top of the gangway. It is a good idea to fit an additional vessel safety information board adjacent to the handrail. Vessel-specific information for visitors should be posted, and a security log for their entry and departure should be kept. Once on board, the inspector should be met by a deck watch in a clean company boiler suit and wearing safety helmets with goggles and safety shoes. A further good impression is made if each crew member's name and rank is marked on the helmet or boiler suit. The master should be in uniform, with shoulder boards and a name tag. When challenging visitors, the deck watch should be polite yet authoritative in a few initial questions. Then he or she is asked to take note of visitor requirements. For vessels carrying dangerous cargo on board, ensure that any hand phone, pager or camera is switched off at all times. The route from the gangway should be cordoned off so that visitors must follow a designated safe route. The inspector can then be escorted to the ship's office or conference room where coffee or soft drinks should be offered, while the master is advised of their presence on board. Do not offer alcoholic beverages. While many port state control examinations are conducted unannounced, the master should be notified in advance of any vetting inspections so that all necessary paperwork can be prepared. All oil, LPG and chemical tankers should have an OCIMF or a CDI Vessel Particulars Questionnaire up to date. The company safety superintendent should go through all entries to verify correctness. Port state checklists, like those used by the US Coast Guards, are also available and can be used as a preparation guide. The master should give the inspector a good deal of personal attention during the first stages of the examination, where the paperwork is completed. The results of recent internal or external audits and previous port state inspections will be examined. Check in advance to ensure there is evidence of corrective action available for previously cited deficiencies. The Classification Society must document any existing serious material defect with the temporary repair approved as a condition of class. It is in the best interest for all to ensure that the inspection will give a true picture of the ship and management systems. Give assistance to find objective answers, both positive and negative. Be honest, and don't hide information necessary to give a true answer. Clarify items regularly maintained by service ashore instead of on board. Best practices may not necessarily work for all management systems. Management may have implemented other standards that cover items inspected. Delays and misunderstandings may be avoided when the potential charterer carries out final evaluation of vessel. Even the condition of the public toilets can create an impression. A missing toilet seat is a substandard condition. If aboard, the company safety superintendent should introduce himself and indicate his desire to accompany the inspector in his tour. It should be evident that the crew takes pride in the ship and that morale on board is a high priority. The use of multiple shape, size and style of binders, file folders and logs should be avoided. Evidence of systematic filing goes a long way in projecting professionalism and organisation, and its value should not be underestimated. The most important safety practice is the use of personal protection equipment in areas where required. It means that all personnel transiting the cargo deck must wear safety helmets and safety shoes. This includes engineering personnel who may be called forward. Deck officers should lead by example and enforce personal protection requirements. Engine staff must use hearing protection in engine spaces, and visitors' ear defenders should be made available. This includes superintendent and inspectors. If the inspector does not want to use hearing protection, it does not mean that the ship's personnel shouldn't. A pre-inspection audit by a company safety superintendent or third-party safety consultant may reduce deficiencies during inspections. Such measures help in advance of a commercially important inspection. Regular internal company audits also assist in maintaining focus on safety and operational performance. However, the critical item is the attitude of the management and crew, which should ensure that the standards are maintained at all times, and not just prior to an inspection. Read more about it below. The superintendent or the master should request to follow the inspector with notebook in hand to detail all observations. In this way, his involvement will demonstrate a genuine concern and interest. There should always be an attempt to have the crew correct the small, easy observations on the spot. The inspector can then see that the crew is reacting to his comments. It may also help to elaborate on efforts made to improve safety and training courses held on board. Specific do's and don'ts should be discussed with the crew in advance. Adherence to posted warnings should be a standard procedure, but all too often the daily routine on board becomes lax and attitudes careless. These phenomena must not be allowed to exist. The only acceptable procedure is to adhere to posted warnings and established safe practice. A cargo pump room is exposed to gas hazard. The inspector expects the crew members to respect safety measures. Read more about these below. The alarm signals on board should be standardized as the SOLAS general alarm signal of 7 short blasts followed by 1 long blast. It should be used for all general emergencies in conjunction with specific instructions, or a PA announcement regarding the type of emergency. Fire on board may be an exception, since many ships are equipped with an installed fire alarm, which may automatically produce a different signal. Inspectors will check that individuals are familiar with the designated signals in use on the ship. The inspector can easily ascertain if a checklist has been filled in without actually reading the item and performing the action required. It is easy for ship's personnel to slip into ticking checklists without actually performing the checks. This is particularly true of the ship shore safety checklist. When this becomes the routine practice, overlooked safety checks are almost always identified during the inspection. Both the chief officer and attending superintendent should double-check the assignments delegated to junior staff members. Read more about it below. Use time efficiently during inspection of other areas on board. Find necessary evidence for items not completed to revert on. Collect missing publications and procedures. Collect the necessary records not readily available from the computer. Consult ship staff or colleagues on certain items. Correct non-compliances found during inspection as time permits. Closing meeting with the inspector. Present necessary documentation for items not completed. This will generally be accepted, in some cases with a comment. Present non-compliances corrected during inspection. This will not be accepted, but a comment corrected during inspection will contribute positively. Discuss reported non-compliances and observations with the inspector. Confirm on items not completed and, where required, evidences not found. Present required documentation for deleting eventual new items. Wordings not giving a true picture of the actual situation should be commented. Wordings like substantial corrosion, some corrosion, may be misleading. Cooperate with the inspector to ensure that the wording best describes the condition clearly as it is. After the inspection is completed on board, outstanding items will have to be dealt with as soon as possible. Ship and management will have to agree on how each outstanding item has to be dealt with and agree on due dates for completion. Some items may be critical, and the charterer may not use the ship until he is confident that the critical items have been corrected. For OCIMF and CDI reports, the owner will have the possibility to give his comments. In addition, potential charterers may request additional information for evaluation of the vessel. The owner's comments are needed 2 to 3 weeks after the inspection and should contain a list clearly describing what has been done and the date for the items dealt with. The list must be as complete as possible, and for items not yet completed, a date of completion must be given. Unclear phrases such as will be done, routine strengthened, master instructed must be avoided, as they do not confirm whether the outstanding item is in order or not.